Shut up and sit down.
Hey friends, it's Simon from Nerd Safari here. Sadly, Ellie is not feeling too well today, so I'm here flying solo. But I figured I would do a little video to tell you where we've been the last few weeks, why we've not posted much content, and really to give you a glimpse into the crazy events that happened here on the east coast of the US a few weeks ago during Hurricane Ida. You know, we've been flooded before. We've had a river come over its bank behind our house and bust open the door and a foot of water enter the basement. And that sucks, and I think a lot of people have dealt with that kind of a flood. And we've lost a lot through that. We lost a water heater and a furnace that cost thousands of dollars to replace. But we did just have a sump pump that took that water and threw it out into the yard and got rid of it. So expensive, annoying, it sucked, causes damp, but the kind of thing that we could deal with. Hurricane Ida was a completely different thing. This hit the whole of the East Coast with just unprecedented rainfall. They called it a 100-year storm, and when you imagine that rainfall is falling all the way along the East Coast, there were certain areas where rivers were causing flash floods and coming over their banks, and rather than just a foot or two of water, you would sometimes have 10, 12 feet of flash flood water. Now, we were actually originally quite hopeful that our property would be okay during Ida. Even though there was a lot of water in the road, we were looking in our basement and things were still actually pretty dry. However, within minutes we had feet of water flooding down our road. This is our neighbor's driveway, and as you can see, just within a couple of minutes there's enough water to half submerge their cars. This is our basement stairs, and you can see the water has already come up about 3 feet. Like I said, just in a matter of minutes. Soon after that, our entire garden started to be submerged in water, and it didn't take long before both of our cars were starting to get submerged as well. And by then, what do? You can't go anywhere, the roads are too dangerous to drive, and the cars won't be working anyway. So really, all we could do was sit there and over the next few hours watch the water level rising and rising and rising. Now, the next morning, it looked more like Venice in Italy than it did like New York. The road had turned into a river or a canal. Neighbors were calling out across it to make sure that they were okay and looking out for each other. And here's a tow truck that actually tried to come through in the middle of the night and rescue some people. And of course, the tow truck got stuck as well. This photo shows our neighbor's driveway again, and would you believe there are actually 4 cars in this photo? 2 of them are so fully submerged that you can't even see them. And of course, our cars had not fared much better either. And within our house, the water had completely filled the basement and had come up through the floorboards of the first floor. So therefore, anything on the floor, including our rugs, which we loved, were completely ruined. Out of our cars, only one was covered for flood damage, that's our SUV. The other one, my beloved Ford Mustang, was not covered for flood damage at all. So therefore I was really hopeful that I could actually get it running again, but both of the cars were so covered, like within the engine bay, with mud from the river. Unfortunately, there's no chance of those cars ever running again. So the SUV, at least we got some money for the car insurance to compensate us for losing that, but unfortunately the Mustang was just sold for scrap. Here you can actually see our basement door and the water line, which is over 7 feet above the door where the water hit. As for the basement itself, as you can see, it was an absolute disaster. First of all, the flood water had smashed the window on the basement door, then it had just smashed open the basement door itself. The door was actually hanging off of its hinges. And the ceiling of the basement was full of fiberglass insulation that had got completely soaked by the floodwater. So you end up with broken glass on the floor, with the fiberglass insulation falling through the ceiling all over the place, and toxic chemicals from things like paint that had mixed in with the river water and probably sewage that were in there as well. The basement was an absolute death trap. Thankfully, we hired a team of people who were actually able to come in pretty quickly and clear that basement. However, I was kind of hoping that there were items in there that I could salvage. There was a lot of personal stuff in that basement, things like personal photos, like electronics, like tools. But when they were clearing it out, of course, everything's covered in mud, everything's covered in sewage and chemicals. Everything just had to go. So you can see the piles here that just look like garbage. But that's our belongings. That's 10 plus years of things that we were hanging on to that are really meaningful to us. There were wedding presents in there and mementos that remind us of family members who are no longer with us. All of that was gone, and it was heartbreaking to see it just thrown out. Even after they'd cleared the basement, this is what it looks like. It still looks like an absolute bomb site, and that's even before everything starts to get damp and moldy. And what could we do about that? For 2 weeks we had no power, no gas, no hot water, no internet connectivity, so it's not even like we could even run a fan or a dehumidifier in there. After that, the basement was just left to get damp and moldy while we just tried to make do and survive for the next 2 weeks. And sure, to start with, playing board games by candlelight and cooking on an outdoor gas grill, like that actually seemed like fun. It was kind of like a camping trip, but after a few days you can believe that the novelty soon wore off. So now we've had all of the wiring ripped out and replaced. That took days and days of wiring. We then had to persuade the building inspector that our house was actually safe to put back on the grid. But thankfully after 2 weeks we had power, we had internet, we had hot water, and we had gas hooked up again. So we were kind of running. However, that's just where the work begins. Right now we have people in the basement spraying everything with disinfectant and mold chemicals to try to treat the mold. The next job is that they've got to rip up every piece of flooring. These are 100-year-old floorboards on the first floor of our house that are just going to be ripped out and thrown away. And we haven't even found anyone to install new flooring. So next week we may be without floors, which would really suck. And as if that's not bad enough, we still have absolutely no clue, and we won't do for weeks, what the insurance is going to be willing to cover and how much they're going to be willing to pay for what they will cover. So we're kind of hiring these people in with no idea what that's going to cost us and no idea what money we're going to get back, but what choice do we have? It's the only way that we're going to be able to get back to any degree of normality. However, all of that being said, some people were not so lucky. Almost 50 people lost their lives in Hurricane Ida. I think the fact that we are where we are and that we are safe and well, I feel somewhat lucky for that. And as much as I was heartbroken to lose my beloved Ford Mustang that you've seen me talk about so much on here, I actually found a local guy who is swiftly becoming a good friend who was selling a 2007 Mustang GT, another convertible with these crazy scissor doors, and he was kind enough to sell it to me for a really reasonable price. So at least we have a car again, and it's a Ford Mustang, and it's a convertible. So in these last few days of the summer, we're at least able to get out and enjoy ourselves a little bit. So there we are. I hope that explains to you why we haven't been on YouTube very much and the kind of situation that we're going through right now. But I did want to say thank you so much to everyone who's left kind messages and been sending us kind words through YouTube and through other social media channels. We really appreciate the support, and just being part of this community, it really helps to cheer us up and put a smile back on our faces when we're going through this crazy situation, as so many people still are, as everybody's still recovering from Hurricane Ida. So thank you so much for all the support. We really appreciate it. We will be back as soon as we can. Maybe I'll have to do some solo videos until Ellie gets back to full health. But if so, that is what I will do, because I miss you guys. It's been way too long since we've been interacting. However, we will see you as soon as we can, friends, on the next Nerd Safari.
Shut up and sit down.